Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Psychonaut Sessions, your home for all things psycho. This is your host, Daniel Muller. Today, we are going to take a look at CANKOR by Matthew Allison. So, CANKOR is a very interesting book. Matthew Allison is one of those incredible, eccentric cartoonists that are out there today that's really hard to get a hold of their work, which is very unfortunate because I can't think of a cartoonist right now whose artwork is actually more in demand, or at least has so much hype about it. From my understanding of the way social media works and how I see everybody responding to his artwork, you can follow him on Instagram. He posts on an almost daily basis, and really, for me, he is one of my most favorite inkers that exists right now. His mastery of the brushstroke just slays me. I study his Instagram all the time. I pour through it constantly, and it's great to finally have a book in hand. So CANKOR was actually, I believe, originally released in Ad House Books and has been out of print for a very long time. There was an opportunity. He had a fourth book come out that he put out himself and put it out for sale. I was lucky enough to be one of the first ones to get a copy of it, and it's already out of print. Really hard to find his stuff. Again, which is so unfortunate because this work is stellar. So we'll take a look, dive in immediately. This cover is blowing my mind. Love the simplicity of the work, but I also love the titles, the logo, all done by his hand, I'm sure. What I consider an honor is that Matthew Allison actually is responsible for the cover of Wizard #2, which I'll have some work in coming out pretty soon. So it'll be great to kind of be in a publication along with him because he's someone I admire very much. So I'm going to get my tea out of the way here, and let's take a look at CANKOR. Now, because of the inaccessibility of his work, this is the only CANKOR book that I have been able to pick up. I don't know a whole lot about CANKOR other than it's sort of set within a superhero spectrum or the superhero genre, but it is definitely not your action adventure superhero type book. In fact, I would actually equate this more to something that I would find from early 20th century surrealists from Europe. It is very much about Matthew's ability to be able to express what is internal to him, and a vehicle. CANKOR is a vehicle for that expression. So it doesn't follow a consistent adventure narrative. It's more about the mind processes of CANKOR, which is an expression of Matthew. And I believe he has talked about this before. There's a really great interview out there you can find at the Comic Lounge, which is one of my favorite comic podcasts. Ryan Balcom just interviewed Matthew, and it's an excellent resource to go check out. Anyway, but yeah, it's either his third or fourth book. He definitely he's used some parentheticals here to keep the confusion alive. And whether he goes by Matt or Matthew, not so sure, because they're right here. He has the parenthetical of Matt and Matthew together. And throughout the book, there's references between Matt and Matthew as two distinct people. So we get the sense here, and again, I don't know the full narrative of CANKOR, and there's not a lot out there on the internet. And I don't think the narrative is important, but there's a group of superpowered beings, and there's a battle going on in Neptune. They're all taking off to go manage it. I think all of their names rhyme with CANKOR, because there's Jankor, CANKOR, and some others. CANKOR is essentially throwing a fit, and Jankor is this fella here, which just love that image so much. I could tattoo that image on my body. It's so badass. But Jankor is going to pick up all the stragglers as everybody's getting ready to go into a ship to go to Neptune. They talk about that CANKOR is throwing a fit, and so looks like Jankor has to go either calm him down or see if he's interested in going or whatnot. And CANKOR is definitely in this space. So this definitely reminds me of some of the early surrealists, because they were very heavily influenced by the dreamscape. And so even outside of Salvador Dali, there were some other surrealists from Europe that had paintings that were very much like this, very simple, but still within its simplicity just conjures that sort of stream of consciousness, subconscious state of mind that we all tap into whenever we're dreaming. So really love it. That's part of the beauty of Matthew Allison's work, is the simplicity. You don't see a whole lot of, scratchy lines or anything like that. Just simple brushstrokes and even a lot of empty space. As an artist, it's very easy to feel like that you need to fill in space for some reason. But one thing I did learn when I was in art school is that negative space actually does a lot for an image. You just have to know where to apply it. And so Matthew Allison I consider him a master at that. So anyway, CANKOR goes to see how CANKOR is doing, and CANKOR is like, he's like, you don't need to come. CANKOR is like, I'm fine with that. Yep, fine to stay here. So CANKOR is like, okay, bye. Takes off. Again, more simple images is great. And CANKOR is obviously working on some sort of a project. Unfortunately, while he's working on this project, and you don't really know or understand what he's working on some sort of machine, this fellow named Dr. Error comes to check up on him, see how he's doing. All the other guys have gone off to Neptune, so he's checking up on him. And smoking a pipe, and is just trying to inquire, how is he doing? What are you working on? Da 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 da. And starts ticking his pipe against the machine that CANKOR is working on. And you get this great panel distribution that really starts building the tension for CANKOR and how annoying this is. Someone who keeps commenting on the things that you're doing, ticking on the machine, and it triggers him. Hardcore image. Love this splash page. So this is inside CANKOR's mind and what all that agitation and annoyance is doing to him. And then you get this sense that we are flipping back in time, but it says that this is taking place on Neptune 20 years later. But it's almost posed as if this is in CANKOR's past. And what we get is Matthew Allison at a table at a comic convention, SPX specifically, 2017, and sharing a table with his other self, with Matt Allison. And he's very disgruntled, oh God, here we go, more fans coming up wanting to sign stuff. And Matt Allison comes and joins the table. He had just won an award. He's getting interviewed by some fellow about his inspirations, his techniques, art style, so on and so forth. And you get the sense that this Matt fellow is fairly pretentious. I don't have any room for any of that superhero stuff and blah, blah, blah. I'm all about the independent, Fantagraphics, blah, blah, blah. And then there's this conflict between the two Matts. So you see this struggle begin to take place. And I remember in the interview that I saw of Matthew Allison that a lot of people wondered if he was very much aiming for that independent vein, and Matthew was stating, no, really, I always wanted to draw superheroes. I grew up wanting to draw superheroes. So then you get this inner monologue going while two CANKORs are duking it out with one another. Incredible fight choreography, by the way. Just really makes you feel like that you're in the midst of the battle itself. And this inner monologue goes through a series of stories, one leading into another of this character's past, if it's Matt or Matthew. I believe probably it's Matt, but I think it's meant to kind of be a little bit of both. In various instances of like a boss who kept tapping the copier every time he walked by it and how much that annoyed him. And leading to other things, just kind of building up into some of the annoyances and frustrations that he has with people in general and just with life, I guess. So we get this a few pages here of this incredible fight scene and this build up. You really have to read it to kind of dive deep into it, but I'm not going to go through a whole reading. And eventually, CANKOR, it takes out the doctor. And not really sure exactly everything that's going on here, but he essentially he takes out the doctor. And when you do that, you get the sense that what he was working on was actually the head of a larger version of himself. And you get a little a hint of one of my favorite early surrealists, actually, Rene Magritte, The Treachery of Images, which is one of my favorite paintings in art history. So you definitely Matthew Allison's kind of tapping into that vein, and that image was basically just a pipe that in French stated this is not a pipe, and it had to do with not the image itself, but an image representing something. So it literally is not a pipe; it's the image of a pipe, and it kind of gets into that meta framework of an image of an image of an image, symbols upon symbols representing symbols. So at what point does something lose its meaning? At what point do you become closer to it? Do you understand it more, or do you understand it less? So CANKOR goes inside the head of the larger version of himself, turns it on. It pops out of the house. And again, the simplicity here, you definitely understand and can tell that Matthew studied early cartooning as well in the early 20th century and mid 20th, and just incredible language here. He doesn't even need words. And so a little bit of other just weird stuff, basically just talking about who he's supposed to be, how this made him who he was. And you see his face begin to sort of develop in the CANKOR style that I've seen. So just wild book. I'm definitely interested to see what my dream space is going to be like. And then in the very back, instead of any bio or anything like that, we just get a clipping that looks like it's from a school newspaper clipping talking about Arvada West High School honoring its top thinkers, tip-top thinkers at the school's 11th annual Scholastic Awards, and Matt Allison is listed for art. And so he had a definition. He kind of pointed out the idea of tip-top thinkers in the very beginning here. In the very beginning of the story, he's got a little asterisk down here. Tip-top thinkers may experience mood swings and display uncertainty about how they see themselves and their role in the world. As a result, their interests and values can change quickly. Tip-top thinkers tend to view things in extremes, such as all good or all bad. Their opinions of other people can also change quickly. An individual who's seen as a friend one day may be considered an enemy or a traitor. The next, inappropriate, intense anger or problems controlling anger may also factor into daily life. Just boom. I get you, Matthew Allison. And of course, we get a final badass image of CANKOR. It's so dynamic. So dynamic, such clean lines. I love his shading. Thank you for existing, Matthew Allison. And so this one's called CANKOR ANAMNESIS. So anamnesis is, I think it actually is a word that originally came from Platonic philosophy, but it's the act of remembering something that, or rediscovering something that you can only find within oneself. Inside oneself. So, and this is an image of that matte version of Matthew at that comic fair, at the Comic Con. Just incredible work, CANKOR. It's too bad that this is out of print. Definitely, this is a milestone in the independent industry, if you ask me. Excellent work. Hopefully we get more out of Matthew Allison. Just follow him on Instagram. You never know when he's going to be putting something out. So definitely I'll put a link in the description. And this is one of those top Psychonaut adventures, ladies and gentlemen, CANKOR. Anamnesis by Matthew Allison. Have a good one and keep it psycho.